Hi, I'm Dino Verrelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple, and also one of the co-hosts of Project Purple Sports. Here we are on the Project Purple podcast, and I'm excited because I have a very close friend, and I consider him a very close friend. We've known each other for a really long time, probably, geez, man, now I got to do
Three,
that. It's probably 30 years.
more than 3 decades.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the Project Purple Sports podcast. The boys basketball coach, well, I should say former, because have you officially retired?
So the cat actually is out of the bag, right? So we actually make the official announcement internally with the students and players today, actually this afternoon. But yeah, it's out there. So there've been a lot of interviewing through some different programs, different schools, different coaches, and that concluded last week. So we will have a new coach announced as of today.
Well, I want to welcome my friend and former boys basketball coach at Jonathan Law, Jamie Anderson. Welcome to the podcast here at Project Purple Sports. And we said we've known each other for 3 decades. Wow, it's crazy, man. So
Mhm.
I know you're going to share this with your friends and family, but let's give kind of our audience. We've got a vast audience, and now we've launched this Project Purple Sports, and so we've got a lot of kids throughout the country, believe it or not, watching these videos, which is really cool. Share a little bit about your background. I mean, we go back to like high school days,
Oh yeah,
but then
we're talking
college
like
is where it ramped up, playing against each other or
yeah.
working, not even playing like competitive. Well, yeah, playing competitive, but like really working out in the summers is like how we got to know each other fairly well. But you had a
Yeah.
great career, high school and college.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, we're dating ourselves, right? We're in high school in the '90s. I mean, and for me, you were into the '90s a little. I was actually at the tail end of the '80s, going into the '90s. So, um, high school, right? Jonathan Law, and then college. I mean, going back to workouts, to how you and I got together and got so close because 6 degrees of separation, right? Kind of like what we do now in our networking, and then the people we associate with. It's someone knows someone, right? And we ran in the same circle that was pretty tight knit, which was kind of in high school back then it was 4, 5, 6 schools, I would say, where there's a small little clique from each one of these schools, and we all got really close, and we all were kind of centralized in certain locations. But that's how we got together, and it was, always easy, right? It was great, competitive for one in athletics, but outside of that, it was a lot of commonalities. Had good families, working families, hardworking families. That's kind of how we grew up and what we did, and had a lot of respect for those guys. For me, going away to school, I ended up playing in college. Like you said, I ended up graduating from SUNY Buffalo, Division 1 there, and bounced around a little bit. I mean, I played professionally in Italy, I played professionally in Israel, professionally in Argentina. I was in the CBA here at Oklahoma City. I played for, Connecticut Skyhawks. I mean, we can talk about, I played in the ABA, right? They brought the ABA back, which
Yeah.
which was gone in the '70s, and we played for the Norwich Neptunes, Thames River Community College is where we practiced and played. I mean, so it was a grind. You mentioned the grind, and you're grinding to try and make it. Overseas was some really good stuff, and the level there was pretty high. But I mean, in between all that stuff, I went to camp with 13 or 14 teams here in the NBA, and was last cut on two of them. So I mean, I rubbed some elbows, which was really awesome. And towards the end of my career, it got to the point where, hey, do you want to keep doing this grind, right? When the people backfilling you are just a little younger, faster, stronger, right? And that started happening even early on in my career, which, is not like guys playing down to their 40s. I mean, this is, pre-30. You're like, hey, some of these guys coming up are pretty good. I mean, I'm at camp with the Lakers with Kobe Bryant, and that's kind of like, and we're different ages, right? And I'm like, wow, this is what it's like. So it's not gonna happen. But yeah, I mean, and the whole time you're just looking for other ways to fulfill your motor, right? So athletics was one, and being hard charging, and then it gets into work, and then it gets into family, and then it gets into stuff like this, where for me, this fills not just a big void in my life, but there's a lot of meaning, and for everybody. And Project Purple, the people I've talked to, right? And you and I go back and forth. I just introduced you to somebody the other day who I hadn't met. I mean, the bank I work for is pretty big, right? And I talked to some guy in Charlotte who's working on some loans I have in a portfolio and tells me the story about his wife. And I said, man, are you kidding me? I said, and I said to him, I said, Mike, I'm so happy that you were comfortable in telling me that the first time we ever spoke on a professional level, ever. We've been emailing back and forth. And he told me the story about his wife. And it was just crazy how this happens before I come here with you to see how deep this is. And we talked about it. And you get to this point where people joke, but they don't, right? Like this, again, the 6 degrees of separation, like everyone knows someone. And my story with my best friend's father, who was like my second dad. Our parents went to high school together, and I found the news that he was turning, and goes back to July of 23. I heard the news that he was turning very quickly, right? There's nothing else we could do at that point. I hopped in my car from here and drive 11 and a half hours to get to South Carolina as fast as I could. And 4 hours later, my best friend and I are sitting at his bedside, and that was when he took his last breath. So for me, that was really the time when it hit home for all the stuff that you and I've talked about over the years, all the work you do, and all those conversations you have. I put myself in your shoes, like this is what Dino deals with every day with the work and with the help he tries to give to people, but he has these conversations and these feelings every day. So that's, trying to do my little part wherever it is. And you talk about the games, and I don't want to take over all the talking time, but I'm really impassioned by what you do and what we do together. And it's trickled down into our community here where we are in Milford.
Yeah,
I don't wear a purple bracelet every day just for the hell of it, right? I mean, this,
yeah, yeah,
when this breaks, I go through and I grab another one, right? And then I grab another one, and
yeah.
um, it's everywhere, and being visible for one, creating awareness, creating education, and giving education, gives someone hope somewhere, and that's what we're all about. Like when we do our game, it's phenomenal. It's our kids. So we used to do a coaches versus cancer game years and years and years ago, and now it's morphed into a Project Purple game. So it's a purple game with your help, right? And with what you guys do, our kids, outside of a cool purple shirt, purple jersey, they look forward to that game. It is very meaningful for them, because of our connections and what we do. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful to be in the fold.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, it's been really special. I mean, I know, we've known each other, like you said, for 3 decades. And I think anytime, friends buy into this crazy idea that I had for so many years until, now it's like, it's almost like supply and demand. We have to be very careful in terms of what we say yes to, but, um, that's a good problem to have. So it's just really, really special for me, from our relationship, Jamie, I'll just say. But let's talk about coaching. How'd you get into coaching? Because, and this is just me, and you're very generous in how you described your career. You probably, I would say, in my experience, probably the one of the most athletic players I've ever seen play basketball, first of all. But also when you talk about grinding and working, playing at such a very high level, for, playing in that era, as you said,
Mm,
the likes of Kobe and, we grew up in that generation, MJ and the guys that played at that elite D1 level that you played with, like you hung with. So sometimes great players, which you were one of those great players to have the success that you had personally, that doesn't always translate into coaching very well.
sure.
And you've had great success. I mean, you
Mm,
you built something that you should be very, very proud of there at Jonathan Law. I know this year wasn't probably the year you expected, but throughout the years, you've had teams that have been very, very competitive and up there in the rankings and probably one
mm.
of the hardest leagues in the state, if not the hardest league for Connecticut boys basketball. But what got you into coaching?
A mutual friend of ours, right? Someone we know really, really well. So I had gone, when I got done playing, right? Playing overseas. My father ran a recruiting firm, and I'm thinking like, listen, what am I going to do? Right? I graduated with teacher certification, right, at University of Buffalo. I wanted to teach, loved kids, loved being around that, early childhood. So I want to do that. And after getting a taste of not an extravagant lifestyle like here or like those guys that people see on TV, and some people know how it works, right? Listen, overseas we don't make what you make here, right? It's a fun lifestyle, right? Because you're put on this pedestal, but it's a much different environment that you live in economically, right? So we do okay for the general populace here, but it's not like somebody here on TV. So anyway, so doing that, and I came back. It was still a little different than being a teacher here. You're talking, you're still like, in the mid to late 90s, and look at what teacher compensation was then compared to what we were doing overseas. And I said, wow, this is gonna be kind of tough to backpedal this far. So my dad says, well, listen, I run a recruiting firm, and I do very, very well, and you can try and learn the game. So we go back to the grind. That's where I learned. So I'll talk about the basketball stuff after, but for I mean a year's time. I mean, I sat in that office and listened to somebody who to this day I consider probably one of the best sales professionals, ethically, morally, but just skill wise. Listening to that person on the phone and how he dealt with clients and customers in that world. And I learned a lot from there. So I listened to all the hangups, all the phone calls. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, listen, well, here's your yellow pages. Start calling some companies, right, and see if they need our assistance as recruiters with anybody in that field. So that stick to itiveness and that willingness to just grind, right, get the door slammed in your face and say, hey, listen, I'm going to get up and do it again, was major in my development. And then it translated very well from athletics to where I was there, because we mentioned those guys before. And listen, I was not the same page, right? I play in the summer pro league in California. It's the first time I saw Kobe Bryant, and only time. And he's playing for the Lakers. And he's 17 years old. He's from Lower Merion High School. He's 175 pounds, travels all the time because officials are probably watching his games as a senior, like, wow, that just happened. So you're watching him, but you're looking at him like, all right, this kid's way different than everybody else. I mean, that's the 1% of 1%. But to go back to your point with different levels in careers, right? And again, talk about one other camp, right? So I'm at camp, and I'm at San Antonio, and this is the two best shots I had were San Antonio and were Toronto. And at the time, San Antonio had watched me play overseas, and I befriended one of the assistant coaches who's now a head coach in the NBA, but for a week, can't shoot, can't make a jump shot, right? But we had these drills, and we're playing one on one, and I'm playing against a guy who I never see get off the bench. When I was a couple years prior, right? And I start playing one on one with this guy, and I'm like, wow, like this is what it's all about. Like, I'm used to scoring all the time. I can't get the ball to the bucket, and this guy doesn't get in the game. So the levels are massively different. It's not like going from Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 in college. This is a whole different ball game, right? So, and that's like that in any pro sport. I mean, people say that in baseball, you have the majors, you got 3, 2, 1, then you got independents, right? There's more professional baseball players than there are basketball, but it's hard to make it anywhere. If you can get paid to play, you're pretty good. So to your point, I was pretty good. I used my athleticism, and listen, the first thing, it was a vehicle. It was a vehicle to get my education for free. I mean, my parents, my dad to this day, who would say, hey, listen, we'd have a little squabble back and forth. I'd say, well, I saved you a lot of money. Right. So, but the coaching piece is, I think when you bring up Jonathan Law and where we were, now it's my alma mater, as you know, we played against each other. And, you know, the school had a lot of the right things going on before we got there. I think it just needed a change, right? Head coach that was there, great guy teaching in the school. And the players, they had some talent. I just think they didn't mesh really, really that well, I would say, if that's a good term you can use. It got kind of stagnant, kind of like how any program can. And they made a change, and when that opened up, we put our hat in the ring as a guy that Danny Maxwell, who actually graduated with me from high school. We said, hey, you know what? We both have different jobs. We don't work in the school system, so let's see if this is something that they'll take a shot on. Right? People outside the program. we're going to come in and change everything, even the practice times, right? My day job doesn't afford me, to get out of school, get out of work at 2 o'clock and go to practice. So it all worked in our favor. And then we got the job, and things really were super, super enjoyable. I mean, even this year, right? Last 2 years, we won 4 games 2 years ago, 7 last year. It's the two lowest years we've had in the 8 for our tenure. Only 2 times we make the postseason. Only 2 times we really didn't advance past a game. But it was incredibly enjoyable. I mean, these guys, the seniors we had this year, as in everyone that we go through, it's one of the biggest reasons I stayed on this year, because I saw them 4 years ago as freshmen, and we cultivated them. This past year, knowing the exit strategy over the last year and a half or so, not that I shied away from a lot of the freshmen and younger guys, but I really pushed, Matt, my assistant, right, who's going to take over, and then our freshmen. I pushed them to really work a lot more with those younger guys,
Mhm.
because at that point we're very, very close individually with these players, but it's somewhat of a business at that point. Like, I don't want to get super close. They're going to have expectations of me going into next year when I'm not there, right? So Matt had more of a voice this year, and I think with our administration, God bless them. I mean, we did such a really, really good job in this transition. It took 2 years to make sure that we had everything set up the right way. And listen, we went through a full interview process. I saw all the folks that came in after I resigned. And I resigned early. I made it as soon as our season was over. I didn't want to affect anyone's baseball season, right? For our players. This is high school. So I didn't want it to affect baseball. I didn't want to do our banquet as we got into the baseball season, right? And have them miss a day. So everything we had working, we had a timeline on it. Just as though when I started coaching, we had a 1, a 3, and a 5 year time frame as to what our business plan was. We ended up taking 8 years, which, because it ended up being so much fun, and it was such a cool experience to watch these guys all grow into really solid young men, right? We have great students. The kids are all awesome kids. Families are great. And that's kind of how we lived everything, and we got stuff done. You've seen us play before, and I think every team in our conference would say the same thing as to what I hear from referees in different parts of the state or on different boards. We go play a state tournament. They're like, no matter what happens at the end of the game, your kids play hard and your kids buy into everything you guys do, whether it's a defensive scheme, it's an offensive scheme. And I said, well, the only way that's possible is if you place a lot of care with those guys and those players from top to bottom, and what the process is. And it's kind of how we lay things out before we get into it. So it's been incredibly rewarding. And like I said, you're getting it first here, actually. Matt will be announced at 2 o'clock today, and I'll make it official. So Matt McParland is an absolute rock star. He's early 30s. He's been with the program 2 years prior to me getting there. So he's been at law for 10 years. He's a teacher at school, but he is a tremendous character guy. Really, really talented on individual skill work, athletically. He actually coaches baseball also. I mean, he's dialed in big time. And outside of being a great human, he's a really good teacher, right? So players buy into him. They love what he's got going. He didn't even have to buy into our mentality and what we brought. He just fit right in. Took him a little bit because he was early on trying to feel us out. Because as you know me, the only way we changed the program was by being stern. Like, we were very forceful, very transparent, but very open. I came in and said, listen, we're going to run this like a Division I program. We may not win state championships ever because of where we play and who we play against. But when you guys get out of here, and when these student athletes leave this building, they're going to be okay. Right? They're going to be fine. And we were tough. We had some kids that walked first year, but we weren't going to waver and deal with any, I don't know, I want to say malcontents, but we weren't going to deal with anybody that didn't buy into what we were doing as a culture, right? Family first, academic second, hoops third. If you did it in that order, wins are wins, right? But your hat and the picture that pops up with you on my phone is your hat that says decent human. So I say it all the time to these guys. If you're a good human, things will happen for you. Because if you're a good human and you put forth the effort, now you're moving the needle more than most individuals.
It's powerful stuff, Jamie. Um, and by the time this airs, Matt will be official. So I know we're recording it today, but like by the time this airs, it'll be out there. So
That's all
nothing to
right.
give away here. So it's
Yeah.
all good. Um, Now, a couple questions just popped in, and I'm just trying to get my thoughts here. I want to stay on this one though.
Hmm.
You've been involved coaching 8 years at Law, playing beforehand, going to Jonathan Law. Where do you, I mean, this year is kind of like one of those weird years, and I know like there's no right formula for it. You've had teams, I mean, 2 years ago, you guys were like you ran the table, right? In the SEC. I think you guys were two
We
or
were pretty, yeah, we were pretty good. I mean, we ended up 18-6.
2 seed or 3 seed in class three, I think, right? Like you
Yeah,
guys
we were. I think we got up to 3 or 4. We
three or
did, but
four. Yep.
yep.
I
And
think you guys ended up losing the Platte in the semifinals of that year, I think, right?
quarters going to
Quarter.
semis,
Yep.
and we listen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anthony Namani, right? I mean, kids. Listen, 6'4" point guard, good body on him. 1,500 points in high school, and they
Yeah, hell of a
1,500
player.
and 1,500 points wasn't because he took 25 shots a game.
Yeah, yeah,
Kid was super smart. I think he went to prep school, and then he's playing Ivy League now, right?
yeah,
So the kid's a Division 1 player, and then a big kid they had down below, 6'5" kid, another great body, great score. So we got probably as far as we could have maxed out. Um, but we had a great crew too. I mean, Rob Hanson's son was there, who's at University of New England now, 6'7"
yeah.
Nolan,
Yeah,
John
Nader,
Nider.
John
Nider,
Nider,
yeah, Nider was Gatorade Player of the Year in
Gatorade Player of the
football.
Year for football, right? Playing at
So
UConn.
he's at UConn. He's still in the receiver room, so he'll have a good year
Yeah,
next year coming up. But we had a good crew. Then all of our other pieces, we had a lot of dudes that were, again, played super hard.
yeah,
I talk about those guys, and I try not to compare a lot. But to your
yeah.
point,
No, no, no.
we I never ran a play for John Nider in 4 years,
Yeah.
not
Uh,
one.
so given what you've experienced, though,
Mm,
where do you stand? And Platt's a school of choice, right? That's a school of choice. They can bring in kids from other areas. And this has been the debate this year. I think it's probably been magnified this year just because of maybe the landscape in Connecticut high school basketball, which I think has shifted a bit from when we played, right?
mm,
Because there wasn't necessarily the pull from certain schools and go to a traditional prep school and reclassify type deal where now that's a big deal. But so I guess my question here is with the current system in place where we have 5 divisions, you've got Division 1, and then you also have some schools of choice, I'll just use that term, in twos and threes. Like, do you think there's a better way to do this? I know I've talked to a lot of coaches
mm,
recently. You know, the other piece that the way that the CIAC does it is it's based on previous they have that formula, but as you know, like, so you have that team, you make that run, and then now you get bumped up to two, or you because of your
mm.
past experience, but you lose players. Like you said, you lose a kid that's playing at the next level, you lose a kid who was Gatorade Player of the Year for football,
Right.
who is still a tremendous asset to your team.
He's an all-state basketball player at the same time.
Yeah. So you lose all these pieces, but now you're asked to move up, but you don't have that same type of
Sure.
need anymore, right? Like it's almost like a rebuild. So is that the fairest way of the way they're doing it, I guess is the question. And how do you feel about that, given your experience?
So there's not a I'm not going to talk for all of them, but I would guess that there's not a single coach in the state that could figure out how or why, right? The metrics work the way they do. I mean, listen, at a high level, we get it, right? The power rankings and PowerPoints. You beat a team that's got 14 wins, you get 14 points. You beat a team that has 3 wins, you get 3 points. I mean, that stuff we get. But the problem I have is, and this is any school. This is schools that are local to us here. This is if I was in girls basketball. And listen, I live a driver from Laurelton Hall, right? So schools of choice, no matter what anyone on the planet wants to argue about, they have a much wider breadth of talent that they can manipulate or bring in. That's just the way it is. That's a fact. So, where we are here, say at Jonathan Law and Foreign High School, and listen, Platte Tech's a vocational technical school. We have 3 high schools in Milford, which is a 50,000 person town, right? But we go on bus route. So kids go to Foreign, kids go to Law. So they all come up on the same youth programs, right? And then they split off as per bus route. Okay. So that's how we get our guys and girls and so forth in town. Other schools no matter where they are. They could be on a train line, they could be on a bus line, they could be somewhere else. It's not like a kid from our side of town says, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to drive my son to foreign because he wants to go there." It doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
right? So in this instance, when you have, and just for numbers purposes, I just said 50,000 in Milford, right? Two schools. Listen, Fairfield has Fairfield Ward, Fairfield Ludlow, right? And they're both pretty big schools. They're both bigger than both law and foreign, right? With higher population. So, but my concern is with any school of choice, you have you could take 10, 15, 20 neighboring towns to pull from, as long as someone can get a ride to your school. You have 1,000 people in your candidate pool, right? We have 25 because we're a split town, right? And I'm not crying because we've done pretty well. And that's not just because of coaching. We got kids that actually are pretty athletic and they play hard and they buy in. So there's a lot there too. But I can't go out and say, all right, well, this kid and I knew him through camp, or when I'm with Dennis Kelly and dribble drive basketball, which is a little plug there, right? When we do that, I can't say, all right, listen, man, you're in Trumbull, but we can get you down here, right? We can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the biggest problem. I think that those days are gone where the teams in Division 1, if we're going divisions now, right? Division 1, when you watch what some of these really top end programs, right? Jason at Notre Dame, you watch the Marabellis, these guys up in Northwest, all these other teams, right? They're playing ridiculous competition outside of Connecticut, outside of our conference before they get in, right? They automatically know they're all in the Division 1 tournament, right? So that's a little different than if you take the schools of choice and do things, because currently they don't all fit there, right?
Correct.
So where I'm going with this is, if you have the ability to recruit and do that, right? There's a reason why, people like Putnam Science and St. Thomas More, my alma mater, play in a separate prep school conference as opposed to a high school conference, right? Even when they have high school age kids, it's a different level of basketball, right? Where they're getting kids from all over the country and all over the world. But I think it's really difficult to figure out how it is. If Division 1 is understanding that they'll cannibalize each other during the year, but they're all playing in that tournament, then that's where I think they all go. I think that there's enough here with schools of choice where not just their own conference, but I think they have the ability to segregate that or separate that, whether it's east and west of the river, I mean, or north and south. Like, I think there's enough to do that, not to have a school of choice, or like, say, like a parochial league in the city,
Yeah.
or but I think they have the ability to do that. I think it's unfair for those other teams. Think about it. Think about teams that are habitually have not been great, right?
Correct.
But because of school size, because of student size, male population, all that stuff. And I don't know these answers, right? This is just me not coaching now, the things that I was frustrated with, right? I don't mind losing a Fairfield Prep, right? I don't mind losing a Xavier, right? Because that's competing in our conference. I
Correct.
think once you move to state tournament level, that should be different,
Correct.
right? So conferences are more geographic as they try to, because listen, it's travel, it's high school travel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I aren't hopping on a plane and going to play in Vegas on Friday, flying back
Yeah.
Saturday, then playing at Loyola on
Yeah.
Monday. And it just doesn't, this is different. So I think the conferences are set up pretty well, right? You're listen, the stuff you guys do with SWC. Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, you got Colby, you got Notre Dame, who that's a tough get for some teams that are towards the bottom of that conference, right? Just like us, Wilbur Cross, Hill House. You got Hand, that's built a massive program. That's not a school of choice, but like, so you have some teams that are separating themselves. And then you got the Preps and Xaviers and all these guys. But
Yeah.
in Foreign's year, they had this year. So for us, it's very cyclical as to who comes in where and what side of town they're on, right?
Yeah.
We're all pretty good coaches, I think, top to bottom, and most of these high school coaches are across the state. But sometimes you have to deal with what you're given.
Yeah.
But
And
back
I,
to your
and I-
point, they've got to be somewhere else on their own.
yeah. And I feel too, Jamie, I think like at least what I've seen, the kids that are getting pulled to go to like Putnam Science and to like Kent or to whatever, like, Cheshire Academy or, Taft,
Mm,
or whatever school they're getting pulled to, come from public school. At least that like majority of those kids are getting pulled. Like I know Torrington lost a kid, which again, Torrington NVL, they lost a kid to a prep school. Trumbull lost their point guard to a prep school. Everyone I think likes to bring up the kid from Notre Dame, Fairfield. I mean, I think that was kind of the exception to the rule, possibly because he wanted to play at a bigger level. Uh,
Hmm.
and we talked to Coach K about that, but yeah, it's kind of interesting that you have that challenging piece in there. It is it's an interesting dialogue to have. I think there's a lot of factors, and I think it's hard to like point out one.
Sure.
But I do feel though too, I think maybe there's a better solution to it. So that's why we bring up the question here. Um,
Yeah.
my next question for you, and I just have two left here. Given not only your playing experience, but also your coaching experience. Let's say there's an eighth grader here watching this from Milford. What are the things he needs to do to make that high school basketball team next year?
Get a ball in your hand nonstop, right? So we're huge proponents. Now we might be different than some other coaches, but I fall in line with I'm an old school guy, right? And people say that all the time, but I ain't. Listen, I'm in my 50s. I'm an old school guy, right? Our administration understands that as well as I'm coaching and we're working through our relationships with players, right? There's certain kids that will get a little bit of time and they'll put a little bit of effort in, right? There are kids that will put maximum effort in, right? And get more time, right? None of that's deserved, okay? That's your opportunity, right? So none of that's you have the opportunity to try out for the team. You have the opportunity to work hard, right? We're not putting anybody in the game or just letting kids play just because this is, fifth or sixth grade rec. All right, we're not doing that. So if you want to get to a point, and I'm doing this now with Dennis as well, where he does unbelievable individual skill work, top to bottom, right? So we're working with some 16U guys now, some from the NVL area and some from Fairfield County as well. It's just about effort, right? Focus on asking people ahead of you, right? Older than you or coaches. What are drills I need to do, right? I tell kids, whether you're 5-0 or 6-10 coming in, you have to dribble the basketball. You have to. This day and age, the ball has to be in your hand. Now, I'm not talking about you during games having it in your hand and you're playing one-on-one, but you've got to dribble the basketball. So you got to be really comfortable with the ball. So that's one. Two, we don't give kids enough when they're younger. Now, I'm not talking massive weight work, right? But you got to give them drills and things to do for their body because kids are maturing a lot faster than you and I did when we were younger. They're getting mature a lot quicker. They're bigger, faster, stronger. We don't want to do anything in excess. We want them to play multiple sports, right? Something in fall, something hoop in the winter season, something in spring to use different body parts, but they've got to work on their bodies, right? So you've got to handle the basketball. You've got to work on your body, which is the biggest thing. And that means you got to be in shape, right? So when you come in as a freshman, you go to a travel program, seventh, eighth grade, right? And you want to stand out, you better be in shape. So you got to go and you got to run, right? You got to do some things. So those three things are the biggest areas. And the last one, keep your eyes and your ears open, right? Watch people that are better, watch what people are doing, watch what you do. If you can get your self-awareness cap on, right? Watch what you do and how you act, your ears, um, listening and hearing, right? We all know those are two separate things, right? Um, if you can listen all day, right? But if you're not hearing the message, right? That's a different piece. So hear what people that are educated on these topics are giving you and then put them into action, right? If you get a couple small drills from you, me, or somebody else that's got some basketball knowledge, right? It doesn't have to be your head coach in varsity or someone else, but someone who's got a little bit of an idea or who's a little longer in the tooth and has played the game. Take some of these drills back, work on those. But lastly, and most importantly, is if you don't work and get after in the classroom, you'll never play. So that's kind of how we teach our guys and teach people here. Eighth grade kid comes to me and says, "Hey, listen, he's a real good point guard. I want to do this, I want to do that." I had this conversation with a kid that just graduated when he was in seventh and eighth grade. And I said, if you are that good and you just want to play hoops, we'll look at other places for you, right? If you want to come here and buy into our culture, have a great family environment, great academics, and then hoops, right? We're going to get you better, then you fit here. But if it's just hoop, you got to recalibrate your train of thought, right? So
Powerful stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and I hope the kids that watch this really, I mean, I ask this question a lot. I mean, and I hope the kids listening and watching, really take this to heart because I think what you just gave is just such a powerful like manifesto to like been there, man. You had success, player and coaching, and I always say, like I said, a lot of terms, it's not rocket science, man. But like I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just don't, they don't put in the work and doing what you've done, learning, like you said, put in the work, play basketball, not be it's got not that it overcomes your life, but you got to put in the work, you got to put in the time to get in shape, to be a player, but then also to learn and to grow and to watch, man. So it's just so powerful, man. I mean, this is not rocket science as we know,
Mm.
but a lot of kids, what's the other saying? Like it's easier to do, but easier not to, right? I always say,
Oh yeah.
right. So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of like, where's that separation? Like it's easy for us to do these things, but it's also a lot easier not to.
Hmm.
Um, my last question here, Jamie, and this has been awesome. We've been involved, and I know you've been really open, and I will tell you this as a friend and as a professional here. It's been really impressive. I know when we got involved with you, you were like, man, this is bigger than basketball. And this is what I want to teach these kids. And we did the co-brand or the co-game with, the young lady who talked about mental health, and everything and the importance of understanding mental health and just making good choices, right? And then also the cancer piece of giving it back. And I know you mentioned the story about your best friend's dad who was like a dad to you, and we go way back, and and my story, my story well enough, but what has it been like being able to do that for like these group of kids, to give
Mm.
back. And I know, in years past, like you've done stuff, following you've taken these kids places to do these things, not just about basketball, but more about like life. So like with Project Purple Sports, we bring in this, like, it's great, right? Like you're wearing the purple swag, we've got some sponsors, we're streaming it. But at the end of the day, it's about community, right? And you grew up in Milford and giving back to that community. And we talked about this. There's people in the community that were going through the journey, this year that, reach out to us about like, wow, it's so cool to see like foreign and law come together to raise awareness for pancreatic cancer. So what's that
Yeah.
been like for you at the helm there, to be able to be in that position to give back through our program?
I mean, the visibility, right, which is where it started, right, and the awareness. And it's not just, to your point, having you come in and talk to the guys, right? It's not just kids. When you see and you have those conversations with kids, when it's the high school guys, right? I mean, these kids are 14 to 17, and some of them, they know the words. Some don't even know what type of cancer it is. I do things with LLS also, right? But it's like they don't know what that stuff is until they're taught and educated. And this is a big thing where you mentioned Ellie, we bring in Ellie. I am a huge proponent of mental health awareness, wellness. And that's, I mean, and even more so as I get older, right? And seeing these kids. And this is kind of where this story goes. I mean, so going back to when I first met Ellie, right? And this is you've done things with her now, right? I think it goes hand in hand with this awful disease and any other cancer, cancer disease itself, right? Any silo or vertical that it's in. Um, I brought her in to speak to our team, right? And I brought you in to speak to the team. And I told these kids who had no idea that people like this were there for you. They didn't. And it's not, again, just a cancer piece, but I looked at these guys after who are, you know, testosterone guys, 14 to 17, competing in a sport. And I said, it's okay to talk about the stuff that makes you feel awkward. It's 100% fine. Whether you do it in front of your buddies or in front of your family. I said, it might not be your parents, might not be somebody else, but this is what I do on the substance side. As you know, I've got a long history in which we'll do another day, which, we're back at Amity in a couple weeks, but they finally figured that out. And we talk about, how does a kid, think about it, when we're younger or we see somebody that's sick, right? you don't know what to say. When you walk into a room, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to respond, right? Think about people that go to a funeral, right? And you and I go to them all the time. And we just went to a mutual one, right? So they don't know what to do. So you have to educate them about pancreatic cancer, right? What it is, right? What's happening there. Then they can become more of an advocate, more comfortable around it. But our guys, as you saw, they bought in like this. It was not even like, hey, listen, we're doing this once a year. What else can we do? What else can we get involved in? How can we get a small check, a bigger check? How can we get something to go that way for more awareness? And that's what I was most appreciative and most proud of, with not just this group, but our culture where we are. But it's the awareness and the education I think is paramount. If you people don't know what they're listen, we're not political, but if you don't know what you're voting for, right? Yeah, so that's kind of where you are. Get educated, and I think that's where I'm switching gears a little now, and trying to give back some more through coaching and some volunteer stuff, but getting more on this side of the table where we can help other people. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's awesome stuff. Jamie, thank you so much for all you've done for Project Purple in the past, with allowing us the opportunity to come to law, and thank you for taking the time to be on the Project Purple podcast. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me, man. I'll be here. I'm always here for you guys. Love what you do. Love the awareness you're raising and all the good work you guys do. The whole crew, fantastic people. So I met a lot of great people within your company, with your organization, and branched out a little further. So I'm happy and I'm pleased. Thanks.
Thank you.